Okay, so this one we're going to be talking about items. So I've got a clean file here that we're going to be working out of. The first thing that we're going to do, we're just going to make a simple command. So we're going to implement the chat controller here. We're going to register a command. Let's do, yeah, it's add command. Sometimes I just forget. Let's just make it add item or add some item and description, add item. And then we'll do permissions. Let's just make it none. And the callback function, which is always going to have player in it. We're just going to write it as a fat arrow function. All right, so let's leave this open for a moment. And let's go ahead and construct our item here. So at the top, I'm going to make an item. We're just going to call it some item. We're going to give it a type of item. You're going to get it from the shared interfaces here like this, and we're going to assign an object to it like that. So we have the open curly brackets, and if I hit Control Space, it's going to ask me, these are the ones that it's looking for. It's looking for a UUID, a name, icon description, data, behavior, etc. So what we can do here is let's go ahead and start with the name of the item, and let's just say that it's a sandwich. Okay. So with our sandwich, let's give it some behavior. Now behavior is, if you hover over here, it has an item type associated with it. So if you do item type and we import this and hit dot, we can assign different behavior to this. So let's say that we want it to be able to drop. We want it to stack. And let's see, we want it to, let's see, we definitely want it to be tradable. And we want it to be consumable. So when you add something that's consumable, that means that it's going to emit an effect when you click on it. But you have to assign that effect. But we'll get into item effects in a second. See what else. What other properties that we can add on this thing. We don't have to make a toolbar. Trade, can stack, can drop. Yeah, no, that's all we need. So we'll just leave it like that. And then let's go ahead and do, we're going to go ahead and do a description here. So, delicious sandwich. And then we could add things like the icon. So I'm just going to make like sandwich as the icon. And I'll show you how to add an icon here in a second. And the other thing that we can add, a UUID. I mean, this is going to be unique every time, actually, so I don't think we need to add that. Data is the next thing that we're going to need to add. Now, data is what is used to call the item effect. So in another example, like here's our teleport effect. We have an event here called effect teleport. So I'm actually just going to copy that, paste that in right here, and we're just going to make a item effect called consume sandwich. So if we take a look at teleporter effect as well, we have like the player coming through and the item that is being consumed. And this is based on the on event here. So as you can see, the effect is consume sandwich, but if we do alt on effect consume sandwich, and then we pass our arguments here like this, so we can do a fat arrow function here as well. This is what is going to be called essentially when we consume this item. So on server side, it's going to call this specific event. That's why these two match. And then what are we missing here? Ah, yes, quantity. There we go. So we're just going to set quantity to 0 for now. And then let's go about adding this item to the player. Okay. So when you add an item to a player, the one thing that you want to do, it's called deep cloning. What it does is it makes a reference of this object, and it makes sure that everything is actually like truly unique. It doesn't have any connection with the things in the past. or any changes that you've done in the past. So in order to do that, we can do item clone, and then we're going to do deep clone object, and we're going to import that, and it's going to be of the item type. Okay, we're going to pass some item into that. So now we have the item clone here, which is an exact replica of this same item here. Okay, so then we're going to do item clone dot quantity 1, and now we have that item being unique, and we can also now begin adding it to the player. So adding items to a player in Athena is done through player functions. So there's a bunch of them for just the inventory. So if I hit period on this, this is all the options that you have for inventory and toolbar and things like that. So what we're going to be doing here is just doing a simple inventory add. Okay, we're going to pass the player. We're going to do some item, and then we're going to do slot and tab. Okay, so what slot and tab means is like, where do we want to try and add this item? So in order to figure out where we want to add it, we need to get that information. So we're going to get an empty slot. So we're going to do another player function to figure that out. So we'll do player funcs inventory dot find, no, not find and remove. It's I can never remember the name, inventory. So we'll do get free inventory slot, and then we're just going to pass the player, and we don't have to pass a tab here. It's optional. That's like if you want it to exist in like page 1 of the inventory or page 2, etc., etc., etc. But here we don't really care. We just want it to go into the player's inventory. So now we get an object back from this, which has a tab and a slot. So we can pass that into our function here. So we're going to do empty slot, dot slot, and empty slot, dot tab. And that will add it to our inventory. And let's go double check something as well. It looks like we're not saving here. So what we need to do is save the player's inventory after this is added. So we just do a simple player funcs save field. And we're going to do player inventory, and then we're just going to pass player data inventory. And that's how you add an item to your player here. So when we consume the sandwich, let's just make it say something to the player for now. So we'll do emit notification, player, you have consumed the sandwich. Okay, real simple stuff. And this is how we add like a generic item. We can add more effects here, like adding to the player's health or whatever, but let's go ahead and just make sure that this works initially here. All right, so we're going to do some item. Is it some item? I don't even remember. What is it? It's add some item. Okay. Add some item. And that does not look like that worked. It doesn't even look like it registered the command. Let me check something. Some items. Did that save? That did save. So let's just make this permissions admin, and we'll double check our work here. Something seems a little weird. You know, sometimes this is just how things go. You forget a step or two along the way. Add some item. So now it's actually showing up. Okay, so it seems like it added. Yeah, there we go. All right, the only thing is we don't have an icon for it, but I'm not necessarily worried about it. And it looks like the other one was added as well, but it's just being weird. Anyway, so the quantity, what happened here? Empty slots. Oh, that's right. We added the some item instead of the clone item. So let's go ahead and just get rid of these. And yeah, that's how we debug that. So it's really important to use the item clone here. Otherwise, you're going to have some like weird effects with your items. But let's go ahead and restart. Run this again. Okay, so now we do add some item. in our inventory. And it's being weird again. Okay. It's because I didn't sync the inventory. That's probably exactly why. Player funcs sync inventory. Yep, that's exactly what it was. All right, so yeah, so you need to get the free slot, add it, sync the inventory after it's added, and then save the inventory after it's added. Otherwise, you're gonna have some weird effects. It's basically meant to be this way just in case like you're doing some kind of like trading or something of the sort. So we want to synchronize things in this way. So always save, always sync when you're performing inventory actions here. All right, cool. So let's go in our inventory. Let's just add another sandwich, add some item. And as you can see, here's our sandwich, here's our other sandwich. And if we want, we can stack them as well. That is part of our properties. So now what I'm going to do is consume it. And in the bottom left, we got you have consumed the sandwich. Perfect. So how do we add an icon to this? So we have an icon named sandwich right now. But in order to give our item an actual icon, depending on when you're seeing this tutorial, currently we have a different resource called WebView, and it has all of our different HTML files and various other things inside of it. Or actually, yeah, give me a second. Think about this. Oh, that's right. Okay, so yeah, no, we have something called utility, and inside of there's a web server. Inside a web server, we have these files that are being served to the player. And these are all the icons that are currently available. It has all the different weapons and everything, but what's most important here is that the icons here, we actually need to add an icon, like a PNG icon, to make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a sandwich icon. I'm going to grab a free one from just online somewhere, and I'm going to go ahead and download that sandwich icon. I highly recommend around 128 pixels for your icons. And you should definitely use something to compress your PNG images as much as possible. In this instance, I'm not really worried. I'm just going to go ahead and get this icon inserted into the system here. So here's our sandwich icon, okay? So what if I reboot the server, and now that the sandwich icon exists, and we know that it is in the web server, we can reconnect. Hit select, press I, and there's our sandwich. So now we have a sandwich with an icon, and we can move it around and do whatever we want with it. Now we can consume it by right-clicking it. It'll say we've consumed it. So pretty simple. This is probably one of the more complicated aspects of the framework. You know, understanding how items work, how to save them, how to save the player's inventory and synchronize it. So on and so forth. But the item effects and stuff, like, so when you consume an item or use an item or whatever, you can do all sorts of things. Like, this is like completely customizable. So this is just a single item. You could create like thousands of different options for your item when it is consumed. Like, essentially, like what I could do here is I could do health 50, and then I could actually get that health here inside of item with item data health. Right? So this item is now linked to this data, if that makes sense. So you could do a lot of different things with just items in general. But this is the very basic example of how to create an item and add effects to it and so on and so forth. But I hope this is useful for you. So anyway, this is how you use items with Athena.